At a frivolous gathering, jokes were made about my role in managing our home. Yet, I can still vividly recall that fateful night as if it were today. The night our world imploded, that ill-fated event, and the revelations that should have remained unsaid. I recalled organizing the party, ensuring all necessities were in place. I was the architect of plans, always prepared for contingencies because I abhorred surprises or being taken off guard by trivial matters. My hosting skills were well regarded due to my knack for executing successful parties. That evening, I decided to deviate from the norm. My husband disapproved, but I pressed on, driven by my strong-willed nature and often perceived as the dominant figure. I rarely minded this image so long as it fulfilled my momentary desires. Unbeknownst to me, I was setting myself up for self-destruction that very evening. Greetings, Reddit. I'll begin by telling you a bit about myself before delving into the narrative. I am Emma, aged 34, and I was formerly employed as a banker, a profession that demands considerable effort. I got married at the age of 22 and have 2 children, a daughter and a son, both aged 11 and 9 respectively. My husband, Ryan, didn't work outside our home. Instead, he operated a remote business focusing on app development and other tech-related tasks. Although successful, he opted to stay at home due to the demanding nature of my job and created an office space for himself where he could work when the children were not around. Our meeting story is quite amusing. We crossed paths at a party hosted by a mutual friend where both of us were in attendance. Dear friends, if you enjoy this story, please like and subscribe to our channel. It will motivate us to make more videos like this for you. The gathering was excessively noisy with drug and alcohol use, a crowd of overly amorous youngsters, and I generally dislike scenarios offering little control. Thus, my intention to depart from the event was met by a perspiring, intoxicated man. Aware he must have been inebriated or under the influence, or perhaps enraptured by the pulsating hardcore music, I scornfully glanced at him and made for the exit. However, he persisted and apologized for our collision. My attention was divided since I yearned to escape quickly. Recognizing my annoyance and urgency, he mentioned that no cabs were available as it was past midnight, and proposed taking me home since he too intended to depart. This proposition surprised me, considering his physique and good looks would typically captivate many women, hence presuming he'd revel in the party. I was taken aback by his early departure from the party, prompting me to inquire about his reasons. He smiled, explaining that he had only attended because he received an invitation, intending to briefly enter and exit the event. As a result, he had shown up in a sweatshirt and pants after jogging. We quickly connected, exchanged contacts, and remained in contact until he proposed marriage, which I accepted. Our wedding took place in a small church with personal significance due to my admiration there and the opportunity to meticulously plan every detail, including minute aspects such as flowers. I prepared my own wedding cake, designed my dress, and enlisted a designer's help for the sewing. I also distributed the invitations myself and oversaw Ryan's wedding attire, which was flawless in the end. If you're pondering why Ryan didn't act, it was because it was simpler to let me have my way and carry out my actions, as I abhorred unexpected flaws. Did I mention that my parents missed my wedding? That's correct. My father had always been a domineering and stern figure. As a child, he dictated what I wore, how I dressed, what I ate, and any resistance from me would result in severe consequences. Hence, it was easier to comply with him and avoid his displeasure. My mother was no different. She functioned like a silent mouse on a leash, doing only as she was told by my father. Consequently, there were no surprise parties, impromptu dinners, or spontaneous vacations. Everything followed my father's orders. I wasn't even permitted to address him as Dad, as my friends did with their parents. In contrast to the affectionate nicknames I observe among friends' parents, my mother solely referred to him as her spouse. Indulgence was uncommon in my childhood, leading me, even at a young age, to vow that I wouldn't emulate my mother. Upon reaching an age where leaving home wasn't deemed a rebellion by my father, such as going to college, which was closer to home than ideal, I departed and never looked back, not even during holidays. My life was purposefully structured to avoid resembling my mother. I meticulously organized every aspect of my existence, including friends, reading schedules, timetables, dietary preferences, and more. Unexpected events were avoided due to disdain, ensuring that my acquaintances understood and respected this, though it took an incident for this understanding to materialize. It was my birthday, and as customary, I had arranged my preferred activities. Purchased a cupcake, indulged in it with my steaming tea as I reclined on my bed, and delved into the latest assortment of historical books that I had recently acquired. Upon reaching my dorm room that evening, the room was eerily dark, which was unexpected since there was no prior warning about power outage. I instinctively switched on the lights, followed by a surprised exclamation and birthday songs. I recall feeling irritated and throwing the cake onto the floor, ordering everyone to leave my private space. I didn't bother with an apology afterwards, so everyone respected my space from then on. On my birthday, I only wished for simple birthday greetings, no cake, no gifts, and I was genuinely content with that. It was what I preferred. When Ryan proposed, I had already known it would happen because he showed me the ring beforehand, and I even picked the venue, invited our friends, and handled everything else. After graduating, I had already established a relationship with Ryan, leading us to mutually decide against prolonging our courtship prior to marriage. Although it was more my choice than Ryan's, he supported it. Subsequently, I visited my parents after many years, informing them of my upcoming wedding. Predictably, my father objected, while my mother remained silent as ever, seemingly reliant on her husband's approval. Determined and unaffected by their disapproval, we proceeded with the wedding, and they did not attend. My father refused to consent due to his reluctance to let another of his controlled entities escape, and my mother followed his lead, treating him as a deity. Immediately following our marriage, I intended to conceive quickly, as I desired to have a child before starting my career to ensure harmony between the two aspects of my life. Fortunately, I conceived just 2 months post-wedding, filling me with joy. Prior to our nuptials, Ryan had already purchased a spacious cottage with 6 rooms and 2 bathrooms, making it an ideal home for raising our children. We both wanted 2 kids, 1 boy and 1 girl, and Ryan was content with whatever gender we were blessed with. Throughout my pregnancy, I spent every moment preparing the nursery to my liking and purchasing girls' clothing and toys, believing fervently that I was carrying a daughter. In due time, I gave birth to our beautiful daughter, Alicia. She quickly became the center of my universe, and I took meticulous care of her. If she sneezed, I was immediately by her side, monitoring her breathing and heart rate. Should she weep, my heart would feel a pang, and I'd strive to alleviate her tears. Ryan would advise me to calm down, but I wouldn't. Instead, I desired to dote on her with the affection I hadn't received from my parents. I yearned for her to have it all. I conceived again when Alicia was a toddler, an unexpected occurrence that brought me joy. I acted as I did during Alicia's pregnancy, hoping fervently for a boy, and indeed, I gave birth to my handsome son, George. Subsequently, I paid less heed to Alicia and focused more on George due to his prematurity at 7 months, fearing his potential demise. When George was 2 years old and Alicia 3, I decided it was time to pursue my career. I grew tired of being confined at home and waiting for Ryan. I detested my dependence on him, even though he never complained. At that moment, I yearned for confirmation that I maintained control over my life without anyone else holding the advantage. When I shared my decision with Ryan, he was taken aback, but didn't argue against it. After all, I was quite determined, wasn't I? Initially, I secured a job at a local bank. The tasks were manageable and had some flexibility, yet due to my ambition to ascend rapidly, I worked diligently, often exceeding everyone else in hours put in, staying late after work when the kids were already asleep and leaving home before they even woke up. Consequently, it fell upon Ryan to adjust his schedule and work hours for the children. I didn't resent this. In fact, my absence increased due to social engagements on weekends with my superiors, even on Saturdays and Sundays when I should have been home. Within a year of joining, I received a promotion that surprised everyone except myself. as promotions usually occurred after 2 years. In my third year at the bank, I was relocated to another town, which filled me with excitement. I started making arrangements, deciding on schools for the kids, choosing a house, planning to sell our cottage for additional funds, and so forth. I had meticulously planned everything in my mind, and so I shared the plan with Ryan. Ryan grew agitated and refused to uproot his life for an unknown location. This angered me, and I accused him of being unsupportive and unhappy about my advancement. As a result, I stopped communicating with him and worked late nights to sabotage any effort he made to resolve our dispute, as I knew the longer it persisted, the more uncomfortable he would become, and eventually he would agree with me. Eventually, he confirmed his decision to relocate with me, citing his need to work from home due to my demanding new job responsibilities and our shared parental duties. I consented to this arrangement as I had no intention of abandoning my career for a stay-at-home role. As planned, we made the move, though I should clarify that it was a move I had already arranged. A week prior, I'd scheduled the truck delivery for our belongings. Despite some challenges in our relationship regarding our out-of-town move, these issues were resolved beforehand. We sold our cottage at a discounted price and left behind all but a few paintings that I found unappealing. I envisioned new environments calling for new artwork. The relocation took 2 days, and we safely arrived in our new location. Unlike our previous residence, this town was quieter and less crowded, yet surprisingly noisy and bustling, keeping us awake during the first 2 weeks until we eventually acclimated to the noise level. Our nights mimicked days due to similar routines. The sole variance was the nighttime's overcast skies versus clear daylight. An additional hardship upon our relocation was escalated costs for everything. Yet, these increased expenses didn't particularly bother me. It was when Ryan mentioned this issue that I grew irritable and retorted, suggesting I could manage our finances with my new income if spending was his concern. He remained silent after that point, and eventually, we adapted, enrolled the children in the schools I had already selected, paid all expenses, and they commenced their education. Afterward, everything else that transpired became a haze. My occupation became increasingly demanding, leading me to spend weeknights at hostels due to late work hours, wishing to avoid disturbing the kids or forcing Ryan to awaken from sleep to open the door. The children seldom saw me, and on rare occasions when they did, I was too fatigued and stressed for conversation or play. My diligence resulted in swift advancement, bringing me immense satisfaction. Believing that was all I required, I thought I had reached my pinnacle and sought nothing more. However, I continued to labor arduously, sacrificing myself for a goal I wasn't fully aware of. Now, I understand this, only because I'd lost it and couldn't reclaim it. My friends often mocked me for taking life too seriously and not enjoying enough. At one point, I considered that perhaps that was the missing piece. In my life, I had a picture-perfect home, a supportive partner, 2 lovely children, and the best job imaginable, but still, I yearned for something more. I couldn't discern what exactly it was that I desired. Initially, I decreased my workload and delegated tasks to spend more time with my kids and Ryan. However, the years of neglect may have pushed them away without me realizing. On a day off, I prepared breakfast for my children, only to discover they disliked what I cooked pancakes. Ryan appreciated the gesture, but Alicia detested pancakes, while I learned unexpectedly that George had a milk allergy when he reacted poorly to eating the pancake batter. Ryan, unbeknownst to me, had been attending gym classes and requested larger meal portions to match his increased energy expenditure. Fortunately, Ryan always carried an EpiPen, and it saved the day during such emergencies. The crisis was contained within an hour, but Ryan had to rush his child to the hospital for a thorough checkup as a precaution. I was overwhelmed, powerless in the face of this situation. Watching my son struggle to breathe because of me left me shattered, and Alicia's eyes mirrored my own, but they were filled with disdain. I was miserable. In the midst of such turmoil, I chose to return to work a place where I held control. As the boss, my orders were defied, or I faced the possibility of being let go. Work provided some semblance of safety, perhaps, in the chaos of losing control elsewhere. Initially, I orchestrated extravagant events for affluent individuals to foster banking relationships with us. Given my prior statement about being an exceptional host, these gatherings invariably led to an influx of customers. However, I grew weary of hosting parties at home and utilized my savings to acquire a stunning mansion. My intention was to transform this residence into a party venue and be recognized for my opulence. I chose not to inform Ryan about the purchase until after I had already settled the payment and acquired some essentials. Upon sharing the news with him, he simply shrugged and instructed me to break it to the children myself. Contrary to my expectation of their excitement, they merely nodded and left the room. Initially, I assumed Ryan was responsible for their indifference, but I remained unfazed. My primary objective was the acclaim and recognition, embodying the powerful woman, the commanding boss lady. Upon settling into the house I acquired after a few weeks, I promptly initiated a series of events, my forte, which turned out splendid as customary. Soon enough, every affluent individual in town, including celebrities, coveted an invitation to these gatherings, leading them to bank with us for the privilege of attending the finest soirees. Over the course of 6 months, I successfully hosted 10 parties within my new residence, each one surpassing its predecessor in grandeur and charm. Regrettably, during these occasions, my children, including my spouse, were seldom present, a situation I found acceptable since I didn't wish to monitor his words to preserve my reputation. However, this changed when a celebrity I declined an invitation to my party due to his controversial online activities began to tarnish my name by claiming that I exclusively welcomed the wealthy and influential to my parties, except for my own husband. Enraged, I scolded Ryan for sabotaging me by not showing up at the social events hosted by his wife, implying that he sought to undermine my success. Not surprisingly, Ryan, the conciliator in our relationship, began attending my gatherings thereafter. Although I was tasked with providing him with outfits for these events, ensuring every detail from his head to his shoes was perfect, he would escort me to each function as I had requested, playing the ideal husband role. Despite sleeping on opposite ends of the bed and Ryan refusing to even look at me after each event, I bore it without complaint. My sole intention was to demonstrate my independence from male control. Everything unfolded exactly as planned, a testament to my meticulous planning, and it was all going smoothly. The only time I shed tears was when my father passed away at the age of 30, though I attended his funeral out of obligation, not grief. I arranged all aspects of his funeral, which drew attendance from acquaintances, including some celebrities and politicians. Consequently, I found myself once more playing the role of gracious host, rather than the daughter of a man who had just passed away. My mother remained seated, blankly gazing at the wall. Since learning of his death, she has been silent and unresponsive to all around her. This was not unexpected, as our interactions had always been minimal. For most of her life, she said only what pleased my father and performed actions that gained his approval. Perhaps the idea of living without someone dictating her actions and decisions filled her with fear. Ryan was absent during my arrival, as he had a pressing deadline to meet. He joined us a day before the burial, at which point my mother cried into his chest for the first time since his passing. I recalled walking away, wounded. Why did she weep for Ryan but not for me? She hadn't spoken a word to me since my arrival, yet here she was, bawling her eyes out and murmuring things only Ryan could understand. I questioned how they had grown so close when she hadn't bothered to inquire about my well-being. Initially, I dismissed it and continued with the funeral arrangements. He wasn't a good father, but I was trying to find solace in organizing a grand send-off for him, believing it would validate that I was unlike him. At that moment, I ignored the pang of conscience as I resembled him more than ever, neglecting my husband and children who undeniably despised me. Following the ceremony, Ryan persisted that my mother moved in with us. I countered and warned him he wasn't the landlord and could potentially be evicted if he persisted with his stance, though it was an error in judgment and I didn't truly intend it, so please don't hold me responsible. Ryan remained silent following this, but I realize now that I worsened my situation with those words. Things were going as desired, and I saw no reason to alter any actions taken. I carried on with my lifestyle and brushed aside the fleeting feelings of guilt that surfaced occasionally. I was living as I pleased, even if it brought unhappiness from another quarter. It didn't matter in the grand scheme of things, as long as I benefited. This is what I told myself to soothe myself and eliminate any guilt until one fateful day. That unexpected day that wasn't orchestrated by me, but had been set in motion by my own actions and foolishness. On that very day, I lost everything. Prior to sharing that information, let me acknowledge another mistake. I was unfaithful to my husband. This infidelity contributed significantly to my extensive client base. Please do not judge me. My circumstances left me no alternative at the time. The affair began during my tenure at a local bank, where despite my diligent work, it felt impossible to please anyone, including my boss who demanded more from me outside of the office and in his private quarters. Overwhelmed, I eventually succumbed. Initially, I believed this was a one-time incident, but it soon became a pattern that led to my rapid promotion, a speedier advancement than usual. However, greed took hold. I desired more power, not just in my relationship, but also in other aspects of my life. I feared ending up like my mother, and this fueled my continued extramarital relationships. In essence, I climbed the ladder through deceit. In some cases, I'd sleep with clients to secure their business. The initial instance left me feeling profoundly guilty, and I considered confiding in Ryan about my actions, but the thought of losing control in our relationship deterred me. It felt like a form of death at that moment, so I hid the truth and persisted in my deceit. Thus, we arrive at that fateful night when I lost everything. I opted to organize an event outside my exquisite residence due to rumors about me only hosting events within my own home. I had informed Ryan the day prior to the gathering that he would accompany me, and his response was unusual, merely casting a strange glance in my direction without responding. In hindsight, I should have sensed something amiss because his look disturbed me, but I regretfully disregarded it. As always, I had prepared his attire and everything else in readiness. While Ryan was absent from the table to fetch a drink, one of my friends mimicked my husband in an offensive manner. I was annoyed by it, but I laughed because she was a significant client at the bank where I worked, thus I couldn't risk upsetting her. At that silly party, we made fun of how I managed our household affairs. However, I failed to notice when Ryan returned to the table, preoccupied as I was with sharing amusing tales about him. The silence at the table should have alerted me. That night, I should not have acted so flippantly. I followed through with my actions, and upon noticing him later, it was after he clumsily spilled the drink he'd acquired on the table with a loud noise and decided to depart. At that point, I panicked and chased after him, but he effortlessly dismissed me and informed me that he wanted a divorce and intended to leave with the children. I couldn't comprehend what I was hearing, and my husband, who had always been affectionate throughout our marriage, let out an unexpected bitter laugh and revealed in a forceful tone what he had learned just yesterday from his cousin. His cousin had disclosed my hidden secrets that I had believed were securely concealed. Apparently, I had even slept with the said cousin, evidence of which was available. I was too stunned to refute anything, and Ryan simply departed. I can't recall how I managed to leave that party. All I knew was when I returned home, Ryan wasn't there, and I rushed to check on the children's room. They weren't there either. In that instant, I found myself seated in the heart of my grand house, a place devoid of meaning now, as tears streamed down my face. All was lost. I had let it all slip away. Despite my efforts to avoid becoming like him, I had become my father unknowingly. The divorce documents arrived sooner than anticipated, perhaps due to his brother being a lawyer, and they explicitly stated I must forfeit custody rights over the children. I cannot. Financially, I cannot bear to lose them. I realized too late that all my strivings were insignificant if I lost them. My life would be void without them by my side, and I realized then that what I considered hard work was nothing but a deception I had told myself. It was the love of my children and my husband, Ryan, that could have filled that emptiness within me, and now I've been stripped of the chance to express my remorse to them. Assist me in reclaiming my children and my husband. I urgently seek your aid. At this point, I'm willing to do anything. I truly need your help, please. Hi Reddit, it's Emma. 2 months have passed since an event irreparably altered my life. Ryan persists in ignoring my entreaties and barring me from our children. I'm filled with remorse and foolishness for my actions. I've successfully driven away the most valuable thing from my life, love, and family. Although I understand that you all seem to despise me based on the reactions I've faced, trust me, none of you hate me as much as I do. By the way, I did resign from my job. I couldn't bring myself to continue working in a place I once considered a treasure, only to lose what mattered most to me. My friends, who had always appreciated my hospitality, departed when there was no longer any reason for the gatherings. I expected them to leave because the loss of friendship wasn't as painful as losing family. I pushed them away. Unfortunately, I find myself mirroring the actions of my father, controlling, unintelligent, dishonest without recognizing it. I even sold our grand mansion and repurchased the former home where we lived, hoping for a semblance of their presence. Instead, it intensified the awareness of their absence. It served as a reminder of what I could have preserved, lost due to my own folly. I had an ideal husband and stunning children, yet I chose to jeopardize our relationship through reckless actions, and I paid dearly for it. My mother visited recently, and I unjustly accused her, believing she was the cause of all my troubles. However, she broke down in tears and apologized because she had no idea that her actions were fueling my rebellion against her. She then disclosed that following my departure, my father improved significantly until his demise. This revelation left me stunned, questioning whether my father possessed the qualities she described. Yet it only heightened my feelings of regret. I didn't offer any chances for reconciliation to the man, viewing him as domineering instead. This perception was ingrained in me since my youth. Additionally, I recognize that I may have been a poor mother and wife, and possibly a disappointing daughter too. At this point, life became incredibly challenging. Ryan persisted in ignoring me and rejected every effort at reconciliation I initiated. I was left living with my own sense of shame and guilt, tormented by the what-ifs. Often locked away in my dimly lit room with drawn curtains, I contemplated the ways I could have been a better parent to my children and a more devoted spouse to Ryan. I deeply mourn them. I miss them so profoundly. I yearn for the joyous sounds of their laughter when Ryan played with them, which I seldom joined in due to fatigue, an action I now deeply regret. I miss listening to Alicia reading and correcting George's homework. I lament the fleeting moments I spent with them. Sadly, I also miss the times I thoughtlessly took for granted. I deeply yearn for Ryan, his dimpled smile revealing itself, the occasional youthful demeanor he exudes. Above all, I sorely miss the affectionate gaze in his eyes as he confessed his love for me. I've come to realize that I took our shared moments for granted. If only I could have been a better person. I long so desperately to make amends. What unbearable torment is this lifetime without them? I once had the world on a golden platter, yet I squandered it thoughtlessly. Now I'm trapped in the self-inflicted cycle of regret. How does one mend what cannot be fixed? How can you undo the wrongs you've committed? How can you heal those you've hurt? How do you apologize when your transgression is irrevocable? It's inconceivable how I let it all slip away in a single night. As they say, one reaps what one sows. Goodbye, Reddit. This will be my final post here. Most likely, many of you dislike me due to my past actions and the pain I've caused to those dear to me. Regardless, I am grateful for taking the time to read my narrative. I value both your disdain and the minimal support shown. My life remains unchanged. We are now legally divorced. I had no alternative but to sign the documents. Prior to signing, I pleaded for a single chance to visit my children, which was both joyful and sorrowful. Alicia and George went to the previously arranged meeting place, but maintained a formal and rigid demeanor towards me. I attempted various methods to ease them, yet it seems that bond is irrevocably lost. At least I got to see them one more time, though the encounter did not unfold as hoped. The last time I saw Ryan was during our court proceedings for our official divorce. His eyes, once brimming with affection for me, were cold and inscrutable. He rejected any financial aid from me for the children's needs, and I declined his settlement offer too. Upon our departure, I called to him, and upon hearing my voice, he turned and fixed his inscrutable gaze on me, causing me to stand rooted. Speech deserted me, words clogging my throat, and a bitter taste rose within me. All I could manage was a hoarse, "Be safe." This sentiment went unanswered, and he departed. Since then, there's been no contact from them. Therefore, I conclude with this advice: never emulate my actions. Never let your family slip away, regardless of the circumstances. With affection from this imperfect parent/spouse/child.